Welcome to the Lions Terrace Ministry. This is Reverend Liz Jackson, and today's sermon is Education and True Word of Yah, Book of Jubilees. Noah divides the land after the flood, part 3. Please vet and look at parts 1 and 2 for good, healthy understanding. Videos are available on YouTube as I'm trying to do this series all in one day and upload it for you guys to have a continuated geography lesson. It is important to know where you came from. For brothers and sisters, we all stem from Adam, saved by righteousness through Noah. For a recap, Japheth's land is the north or the cold weather. Shem's is the middle of the earth, a blended weather. And Ham's is the south or hot weather. And this portion is chapter 3, or I should say part 3, of Noah Divides the Land series. Again, Abba Yah led me to the God culture 2 years ago, where they have so much online that you need to study your little hearts out. Shem's portion, again, as a recap, consists of all of Asia, China, India, Philippines, Japan, but not the Sinai peninsula, as this is Ham's, and you will see when we dissect Jubilees in this sermon. Russia, the Urals, are the dividing line. The capital of Russia and everything east is Japheth, and the rest is Shem's. Shem has all of Eden, which is the North Pole, the whole land of the Red Sea, which includes Iran, Iraq, or the Medes. In keynote, when I say we, I mean me and Abba Yah. We'll be using the same maps and introducing new ones to define Ham and Japheth's land division in part 4. The sermon was going to be on both Ham and Japheth's inheritance. However, due to indoctrination and yes, the changing of our history, we need to dissect and discuss how Ham divided his territories between his sons. Something to keep in mind. Abba Yah reminded me to state this. Maps are to be read like you would his language in all ancient languages from east to west and not west to east, which is why he had me flip some of the maps. Again, this map is a screenshot that I took while I was watching the flood series of the God culture, and the green indicates Japheth's territory, the gold and yellowish is Shem's, and the purple is Ham's. Ham's inheritance, written in Jubilees 8:22 through 24, and it states, and for Ham came forth the second portion beyond the Gihon towards the south to the right of the garden, and it extended towards the south, and it extended to all the mountains of fire, and it extends towards the west to the Sea of Adel, and it extends towards the west till it reaches the Sea of Ma'uk, that sea into which everything which is not destroyed descends, and that's a mistranslation right there, but that's okay. And it goes forward towards the north to the limits of Gadir, and it goes forth to the coast of the water of the sea to the waters of the great sea till it draws near to the river Gihon, and goes along the river Gihon till it reaches the right of the Garden of Eden. And this is the land which came forth from Ham as the portion which he was to occupy forever and for himself and his sons unto their generations forever. As discussed in parts 1 and 2, your United Nations knows this. Thus, they use a flat earth map for a reason. As pictured in the Mercator map, you see, this is how your earth really looks from the view of God. So the borders of Ham's inheritance is west to the edge of Eden and south from Africa to South America. As we did in parts 1 and 2, we will be using the true layout of the land as pictured in the map from Gleason's map to your left-hand side. Again, notice that the North Pole is in the center of the Earth and it runs 180 degrees east to west. Our directions in Jubilee work best if our map is flipped upside down. Nothing gets changed or excluded by doing this. And it is what Abba Yah told me to do because Isaiah 29 verses 16 through 19 tells us, surely your turning of things upside down shall be esteemed as the potter's clay. For shall the work say of him that made it, he made me not? Or shall the thing framed say of him that framed it, he had no understanding? Is it not yet a little while, and Lebanon shall be turned into a fruitful field, and the fruitful field shall be esteemed as a forest? And in that day shall the deaf hear the words of the book, and the eyes of the blind shall be out of obscurity and out of darkness. Lebanon is in desolation right now because, as you will learn, Canaan, Canaan, stole part of Shem's territory. And we will get to that in a little bit. So let's begin. Jubilees 8:22. And for Ham came forth the second portion beyond the Gihon towards the south to the right of the garden, and it extends towards the south, and it extends to all the mountains of fire, and it extends towards the west to the Sea of Adel, and it extends towards the west till it reaches the Sea of Mu'uk, in which everything which is not destroyed descends. Again, your rivers from Eden are as follows in order to make sense of even what Genesis says, that the river Gihon has to encompass all of Ethiopia. From part 2, you learned all of Ethiopia was huge, and you're going to learn that in part 3 as well. This map is a map of the rivers from Eden, which are now below the sea, as you learned in part 2. Did you know there are many lost civilizations resting at the bottom of the sea? And we will discuss one when we talk about South America. So, taking our map, moving beyond the Gihon towards the south and to the right of the garden, using our map, we go beyond the Gihon to the south and to the right of Eden will put us at South America. If you're unaware, there are pyramids all over the world. Our ancestors, Ham, Japheth, and Shem, and everyone else were not Neanderthals, as your wonderful scientists and indoctrinated camps called government want you to think. They were brilliant and built cities that we are just now rediscovering. The technology that we are remembering were of the olden days as well, for we are reminded in Ecclesiastes. The things that have been, it is that which shall be, and that which is done is that which shall be done, and there is no new thing under the sun. And it makes sense if you listen to my sermon on social amnesia. Because if you're not following the one true God and you're not learning his true word and your identity, you have social amnesia. Here is a picture of pyramids located in the waters around Cuba. This is taken from Archaeology World. Again, all references and resources pulled off the internet are at the end of my sermon. The remains of what may be a 6,000-year-old city immersed in deep waters off the west coast of Cuba was discovered by a team of Canadian and Cuban researchers. Offshore engineer Paula Zaltsky and her husband Paul Weizig and her son Ernesto Tapenez used sophisticated sonar and videotapes device to find some kind of megaliths you would find on Stonehenge or Easter Island. Weizig said in an interview, We must remember that the land we see today was different than the land Noah knew. As continental drifts, tides, and other natural occurrences has changed the shape and the coastal regions of the land. Next, we move on. Jubilees tells us, and Ham's inheritance extends towards the south, and it extends to all the mountains of fire. So, moving forward, we go in the direction south, more south, puts us at Indonesia and Australia. And this is not talking about the ring of fire that we are accustomed to. For Gunung Api Veter, or Gunung Api, equals fire mountain. Volcanoes form a small round island in an isolated location in the Banda Sea, Indonesia. It can be said that Indonesia is a country having the most active volcanoes in the world. Indonesia has a great number of volcanoes in the world. There are 147 volcanoes, and 76 of them are the active volcanoes that spread along the island of Sumatra, Java, Celebes, and Lesser Sunda. Indonesia, people, is part of Ham's territory, and so is Australia. Moving on, and it extends towards the west of the Sea of Atal, and it extends towards the west till it reaches the Sea of Ma'uk, that sea into which everything which is not destroyed descends. The Sea of Ma'uk is hard to prove, but it is like your middle Atlantic Ocean part where the Bermuda Triangle lies. Hence, where everything descends, does get destroyed, or lays at the bottom of the ocean, because that is a mistranslation, and I forget what it's supposed to actually say. So anyway, moving on, we don't need the Sea of Ma'uk, but just know it's the Atlantic where the Bermuda Triangle is, and therefore includes the Caribbeans and the islands of Haiti and the Dominican Republic, and as we just read, Cuba, all belong to Ham. The Sea of Atal was extremely hard to find, and according to my research, was an ancestor to the Caspian Sea. The Caspian Sea is the world's largest inland body of water, variously classed as the world's largest lake or a full-fledged sea. As an endorheic basin, it lies between Europe and Asia, east of the Caucasus, west of the broad steppe of Central Asia, south of the fertile plains of southern Russia in Eastern Europe, and north of the mountains Iranian plateau of Western Asia. So off to your right-hand side, you have the Caspian Sea, as it looked like way back in the day, and not in 1492 when Columbus did not discover America. Here you have a modern day image of the Caspian Sea. So in order for me to identify the atoll as spoken of in Jubilees, Abba Yah led me to Caspian Sea Biodiversity Project under umbrella of Caspian Sea Environment Program. And it states that atoll reservoir emerged some 50,000 years ago under conditions of arid climates. Its water used to cover only the depressions of the middle and southern Caspian. Apparently, the level of Atal Lake was lower than that of the present Caspian by 50 meters. Obviously, that this lake, as well as other regressive water bodies, ancestors of the Caspian Sea, existed for a short period, probably a level lower than the present, with full descension of the northern Caspian remained for only a few millennia. We should note that the regression continued under subsequent climate cooling and moistening. Arid conditions occurred only at the beginning of the life of Atal Lake, and further history passed by under more cold and humid climatic conditions. In any case, cold-loving flora and mammoth fauna gained broad distribution in lower stretches of the Volga during that time. As Ada Lake existed for a rather short period of time, its sediments are rather thin. The microsculpture of valves of Cypridius Taurus refers to the salinity of Ada Lake. Speaking about Ada Lake, it's necessary to tell that the most significant breaking point in the evolution of both water and land organisms during the whole Quaternary period occurred during its lifetime. So, the Ada Lake can be found and was part or is now named the Caspian Sea. And the Caspian Sea is in Shem's territory. Going back to our map and journeying west of the Caspian Sea as our directions tell us, we arrive at the Sea of Mu'uk. Again, the sea is hard to find, but again, common sense tells us it is the sea that embodies the Bermuda Triangle. But Jubilees 7 gives us some detail regarding the name, the location of Ma'uk. This portion is before the land is divided. And Jubilees 7, 13 through 14 and 17 states, and Ham knew that his father had cursed his younger son, which we will get to in a moment, and he was displeased that he had cursed his son, and he parted from his father, and he and his sons with him, Cush and Mizraim and Put and Canaan, and built for himself a city and called its name after the name of his wife, Ma'uk. And behold, 3 cities are near Mount Luber, fronting the mountains on the east, and Ne Elatama Ma'uk on the south, and that big long word towards the west. Well, that tells us that Ham built a city. The God culture states that there is a city in South Africa similar to Ne Elatama Ma'uk. I did not include that because I could not find information on that, so I wasn't going to lead you astray by inserting things that I myself could not prove. I'm not saying the God culture is wrong, because Abba Yah, oh my goodness, he is working with and in them 100%. It's just I could not find information to give to you so you, the reader, the viewer, have accurate information. Ham's territory contains all of Africa and the Sinai peninsula. If it wasn't, then his ancestors and the names for his sons would not be Ethiopia or Egypt. Many people have been led astray on purpose again, and this is to cause chaos and conflict. Remember, this is before any nations have been scattered because the disobedience are taken into captivity by anyone. This map, again, is from part 2, and I said we were going to reuse maps because why reinvent the wheel when we have accurate information that is provable already done. So this map, again, was a part of a set of 22 maps dedicated to William, Duke of Gloucester, who lived from July 24th, 1689 to July 30th of 1700, who was then an 11-year-old student at Oxford. Edward Wells was a Church of England clergyman and advocate for education. He published prolifically, including several atlases of the ancient and contemporary world. Wells was the son of a vicar and entered Christ Church, Oxford, in late 1686. Notice how the land is divided and named. Okay, again, we're going to go back over this. Ethiopia, all in this greenish, purple, blue, whatever my daughter said, it looked greenish blue to me. So all the greenish blue areas, that's Ethiopia. Libya has the yellow. And then Egypt is even outlined where Egypt belongs. up over here, and you will see why this area is also included land in Shem, or not Shem, but Ham's territory, because that is well documented. So as you can see, the red indicates Egypt, the greenish blue is Ethiopia, and again, the yellow is Libya. We continue. Jubilees 9:1. And Ham divided amongst his sons, and the first portion came forth for Cush towards the east, and to the west of him for Mizraim, and to the west of him for Put, and to the west of him and the west thereof on the sea for Canaan. The sons of Ham are Cush, Mizraim, Put, and Canaan. These names are important because they give us the location of Ham's territory, at least when it pertains to Africa. This territory as well will be divided amongst the sons of Ham, Shem, and Japheth. I missed a period. Anyway, this territory as well will be divided amongst the sons of Shem, or Ham, excuse me. Shem and Japheth divided theirs amongst their children as well, and I don't go into Shem's, but I touch a little bit on Japheth's, and you're going to see why when we do part 4. Mizraim is the Hebrew and Aramaic name for the land of Egypt, with the dual suffix aim, perhaps referring to the two Egypts, Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt. Mizraim is the dual form of Maxor, meaning a mound or fortress, the name of a people descended from Ham. Here's another look at what Egypt consisted of. And you see the Sinai Peninsula, you see Egypt all right in here, all over here, because that says Libya. Cartographic source for this map, Urals own 2-sheet map of ancient Egypt dedicated to the humanist and medical doctor Scipio Fabio from Bologna, which appeared in 1565 and for which Urals mentions as source Diodorus, Herodotus, Strabo, and Plinius. Sorry for butchering names. The Sinai Peninsula has always been a part of Egypt from the first dynasty of ancient Egypt in Babylonian time, circa 31 BC. In period of foreign occupation, the Sinai was, like the rest of Egypt, also occupied and controlled by foreign empires. In more recent history, the Ottoman Empire and the United Kingdom. Cush is Hebrew word H3568, and it means Cush or Ethiopia, the name of a son of Ham and of his territory, also of an Israelite. That again is taken from blueletterbible.org, the lexicon that I use to do all my studies, and again is found at the end of this sermon. The photo with Put being named Libya is also taken from the Blue Letter Bible lexicon, and it means Put, a foreign origin, Put, a son of Ham, and is identified as Libya, according to Josephus. But as we saw in our maps, proved to be true. So moving to a new map of Africa, we can see that this one also states Libya to be Put and Cush to be Ethiopia. Aren't maps amazing? That's all I can say. De la Frac translates to of Africa, and this map is from 1683. Notice how huge Libya is, and you can clearly see the borders of each territory given to Put or Libya and Cush or Ethiopia. Remember, brothers and sisters, we are being fed a false narrative when it comes to our history. Modern history hides on purpose what was once known in our ancient maps. This hidden history is a modern day event because society has told us that our Abba Yah is dead or tries to confine him in a box known as religion. And we must do our parts to shine our lights on his truth. Otherwise, we fall under the law of sin and death. Next, we are going to identify Canaan's land given to him. First, we need to understand Canaan was cursed twice. Then we will locate what was supposed to be his land and discover that he wasn't having it and stole land that he wanted, which is why there is a promised land. And that land belongs to Shem. Everything up to the Mediterranean Sea, not including the Sinai peninsula, is Shem's. And the Sinai peninsula is Ham's. Just to clarify, because I don't want to mess up anybody. The Sinai peninsula is Ham's. The land that belongs to Shem up to the Mediterranean Sea, but not including the Sinai peninsula, is Shem's. And you're going to see why here in a moment. So moving forward, Jubilees 7:8-10 tells us what went on. And Ham saw Noah his father naked and went forth and told his two brothers without. And Shem took his garment and arose, he and Japheth, and they placed the garment on their shoulders and went backwards and covered the shame of their father, and their faces were backwards. And Noah awoke from his sleep and knew all that his younger son had done unto him. And he cursed his son and said, Cursed be Canaan, an enslaved servant shall he be unto his brothers. Now my daughter had asked me, what does without mean? So I looked it up because Genesis records this event as well. And without means, Ham went into the street and proclaimed his father's nakedness. How disrespectful. I don't know why, instead of cursing Ham, he cursed Canaan. Couldn't tell you. Maybe Ham was sick. Don't know. But I do know Jubilees and Genesis match when it comes to these verses. Jubilees 7:11-12. And he blessed Shem and said, Blessed be the Lord God of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. God shall enlarge Japheth, and God shall dwell in the dwelling of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. Genesis 9:22-27 states the exact same thing as Jubilees. Canaan was cursed because Ham saw his father naked. This is not Canaan's entire line right now, as it's just him. However, we are going to read why he and his descendants are cursed forever. Next. Jubilees 10:29-34. And Canaan saw the land of Lebanon to the river of Egypt, that it was very good, and he went not into the land of his entire inheritance to the west, that is, to the sea. And he dwelt in the land of Lebanon, eastward and westward, from the border of Jordan and from the border of the sea. And Ham his father and Cush and Mizraim his brothers said to him, Thou hast settled in a land which is not thine, and which did not fall to us by lot. Do not do so, for if thou does do so, thou and thy sons will fall in the land and be accursed through sedition. For by sedition you have settled, and by sedition thy children fall, and thou shalt be rooted out forever. Dwell not in the dwelling of Shem, for to Shem and his sons did it come by their lot. Cursed art thou, and cursed shalt thou be beyond all the sons of Noah, by the curse by which we bound ourselves by an oath in the presence of the holy judge, and in the presence of Noah our father. But he did not hearken unto them, and dwelt in the land of Lebanon from Hamath to the entering of Egypt, he and his sons until this day. And for this reason, that land is named Canaan. Here's another map, folks, titled Map of Canaan. What does it include? It includes the Jordan, Israel, Tel Aviv. It's the promised land promised to Shem. Canaan took it upon himself to steal this land. Why do you think there's unrest in the Middle East constantly, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week? There are people who know the truth. And all that needs to happen is the land given back to who it actually belongs to, which is the descendants of Shem. Not Canaan and not Ham, as Jubilees declares. That's why there's a promised land. And I hope you look at this map really hard, and I hope you understand. So as you can see in the above map from 1692, we see that the land of Lebanon, also called Canaan, because he stole it, includes Israel, Jordan, Syria, and present-day Lebanon. Again, this is why Israel is called the Promised Land, because it falls in Shem's nation, and thus belongs to Shem. Why do you think there's so much chaos and destruction over there? Why do you think people fight to protect the Holy Lands? This land theft was done by Canaan. Canaan didn't listen, and his descendants in this instance became cursed forever. They took a holy pledge to inhabit the lands they were given. And when you pledge yourself and vow yourself to Abba Yah, and then you break it, you bring upon a generational curse that extends until you try to figure out how to break it, which I do have sermons online about breaking generational curses. But when the Lord God, Abba Yah, says forever, he means forever. Unless you understand and learn your history, and then you plead for forgiveness, and you turn to the one true Abba Yah, creator, who made everybody alive today and yesterday and 10 years ago and 30 years ago and 100 years ago and 3,000 years ago. From the time Abba Yah made Adam up until today, everybody descends from Adam. The definition of sedition is incitement of resistance or insurrection against lawful authority. I have yet to publish, you can't have a resurrection without an insurrection. An insurrection is unlawful authority and will going against the true word of Abba Yah. The Mediterranean Sea was supposed to have been Canaan's land. Jubilees 9 tells us this. Jubilees 9:1. And Ham divided amongst his sons, and the first portion came forth for Cush, towards the east, and to the west of him for Mizraim, and to the west of him for Put, and to the west of him, and to the west thereof on the sea of Canaan. Canaan was to have land on the Mediterranean Sea. Following the directions, the land of Put west, we do arrive at the Mediterranean Sea. Here's a map of the Mediterranean Sea from 1873. I chose this map as it is the only one I could find that highlights all or nearly all the land islands of the Mediterranean Sea, as this was what Canaan was supposed to have inherited. Remember, it has to be the lands in the sea because nobody else's lands can touch or, overlap each other. We read what happens in Jubilees 7 when someone steals land that isn't theirs to inhabit. And I think I misspoke because Let me look. Let me go back up here. I don't want, like I said, to misspeak at all. In Jubilees 10, my bad. So I apologize. Jubilees 10 tells you that Canaan stole the land from Shem. And Jubilees 9 tells us that the Mediterranean Sea, again, was supposed to be his. Did you know there are over 3,000 islands and many more inlets in the Mediterranean Sea? Its two largest in both of our terms of both size and population are the Italian islands of Sicily and Sardinia. Sardinia has giants and has historical evidence of giants, and maybe that's why Canaan disobeyed his assigned lot. The Bible is not clear on what made Canaan do what he did, other than he saw the land was fertile and wanted it for himself. That's a form of coveting, folks. That's against the 10 Commandments. Thou shalt not covet your neighbor's anything. But Canaan sure coveted, and the Lord God cursed him till this day. Either way, he went against what he vowed, and that's a, offense to Abba Yah too, because if you tell Abba Yah you're going to do something, he expects you to do it. Otherwise, there's consequences. We know this to be only the islands as we continue to break down Jubilees 8 and outline the rest of Ham's territory. Jubilees 8, 23 through 24. And it goes forth towards the north to the limits of Gadir, and it goes forth to the coast of the waters of the sea, to the waters of the great sea, till it draws near to the river of Gihon, and goes along the river Gihon till it reaches the right of the Garden of Eden. And this is the land which came forth for Ham as the portion which he was to occupy forever for himself and his sons unto the generations, again, forever. The limits of Gadir is Cadiz, Spain. While I was in my psychology courses, I took world music, and I learned about music in Cadiz, Spain, and I learned that the ancient name was Gadir. So when I read the book of Jubilees, I was like, wow, that's a Spain. And my mind was blown and my mouth dropped open. And I said, I can't wait for you, Abba Yah, to show me more. So even the Encyclopedia Britannica says Cadiz, capital city, capital, and principal seaport of Cadiz in the Comunidad Autónoma of Andalusia, southwestern Spain, traditionally said to be founded as Gadir by Phoenician merchants from Tyre as early as, again, Babylonian 11,000 BC. So they can't even say Abba Yah and Noah. They have to blame everything on Phoenician and Babylon because that's what indoctrination has taught us. Gadir, Spain is the northernmost portion of Ham's territory. It does not include the rest of the land around the Mediterranean Sea, but along the coast of the sea and the land within the waters, and Lebanon is not included in this ever. Then circles back around Africa until it reaches the right of the Garden of Eden, and as we discussed in part 1, the Garden of Eden is the Philippines and not in Africa. So going back up here, when we read Isaiah, I want to be clear on that again, so we're going to read Isaiah again when I find it. Isaiah says, 29, 16 through 17, surely your turning of things upside down shall be esteemed as the potter's clay. For shall the work say of him that made it, he made me not? Or shall the thing framed of him say that he framed it, that he had no understanding? Verse 17, is it not yet a little while, and Lebanon shall be turned into a fruitful field, and the fruitful field shall be esteemed as a forest? Isaiah 29:17 comes and enlightened and to life when you understand Canaan, those are two different people, by the way, and that sermon's coming up soon as well. Canaan stole the land of Shem. Let's go back. Let's look. See? Canaan. Land of Canaan, Shem's territory. It's in desolation right now. Wars, fighting all the time. This is why. Let's go back. So, to conclude, Ham's territories include the Mediterranean Sea and its islands only, Africa and the Sinai Peninsula, South America, Latin America, the islands in the Caribbean, Australia and Indonesia, and the surrounding islands, and all islands that are warm. Religion and this world's education systems are your beasts that you need to overcome. Breaking down Jubilees gives us an understanding how people have been all over the earth, and archaeology proves this to be accurate. However, what mainstream archaeologists want you to believe are those paid for by the establishment to push an agenda. There are people who want to know the truth as badly as I have, and I hope you do as well. Abba Yah says, seek and you shall find. Knock and it will be opened. Ask and it will be given unto you. Abba Yah also says in Luke 8:17, for nothing is secret that shall not be made manifest, neither anything hid that shall not be known and come abroad. Brothers and sisters, we again come from Adam, saved by Noah's righteousness, and unto this day we are still one children under Abba Yah, known as mankind. And if you choose to continue to hate because of someone's skin tone, then you are under the law of sin and death, because Abba Yah does not tolerate hate whatsoever.